So I received quite some questions from you about Scopus AI after this first session, and I put all of them together to make sure that we can answer them. Also, I got some emails of some questions over the emails that were sent by some participants. So this is also some questions we are going to address. For your information, we are like last time on Zoom, so there is quite standard setup. You have the question and answer and chat in the bottom of your screen. Please make sure that if you have any additional questions that you would like to ask today, you are going definitely to put them into the Q&A session. And the Q&A session, yes, it's here. It looks like this. You can type any questions you would like to ask additionally. And the link to the recording, I'm going to share it over the emails. I hope that this time it will work smoothly. I really do hope for this, because the last time was quite difficult for me, especially that I started to receive many questions from you about when you are going to get the recording and all these questions. So yes, I will do my best to send it over the email. And with that one, I think I will stop sharing my screen. So you will see both of us with the questions, and we will start with some, I believe, the ones that are showing up very often. Adrian, you can actually tell more about this, whether this is an often a question. So the first question from our participants of the last webinar was, could you please explain what kind of technologies are used in Scopus AI, and why did you decide this particular ones to use?
No worries, Kate. Thank you. And hello, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Major Radisho. I'm the product manager on Scopus AI. It's a privilege to speak to all of you today. I hope I can do my best to answer your questions. And starting with this one, the type of technology is used. So Scopus AI uses primarily two main technologies. One is a new vector search technology, which is kind of like a semantic search. And what we're doing there is we're using a small language model, which is it's mini LM. It's a vectorization model, which means that rather than the traditional search way of searching on Scopus, where we take your keywords and we try to see which documents match those keywords, which sometimes means that you find documents that maybe have the same keywords, but they don't exactly get semantically what you're trying to find. The new vector search has a natural language understanding. So it is able to identify relevant documents that directly relate to or try to answer a given query or question. And that's the first set of technologies we use to help retrieve a list of documents we think are highly relevant. And the second main technology is, as most people are aware of now, the large language models, things like ChatGPT, which is the primary one we're using with our partners at Microsoft. And what we're using there is a mixture of those top 10 documents, or sometimes top 20 if you use the expanded summary, combined with some pretty advanced prompt engineering to help generate the summary, as well as other generative AI features that you've seen on the product, like the concept map and a few other things like suggest and go deeper queries. So those are primarily the two main technologies we're using to help generate the product.
Okay, and any additional comment? Why that one? Why not anything else?
Why we went for those two? Well, we actually tested a lot of different technologies. And one thing we realized is the current search on Scopus is fantastic. But to do a really good job at producing a generative AI solution for Scopus AI, we needed to build a whole new search tech stack that was able to have much more relevant documents that can relate to a natural language question, because people expect to use these tools by asking natural language questions or having more conversation. And that doesn't work so well with keywords. If you try to go to Scopus and try asking a question to the current search, it's just not something it's really built for. It's built for doing fantastic literature review type searches. And so that's one reason we went down, and we tested a whole bunch of different models, and we settled on an open source version, which was called Mini LM. Anyone can see it. You can see the training data for it. It performed the best of all our testing, both with our qualitative and quantitative testing with users and our internal evaluation frameworks. And so we selected that one. And with OpenAI's ChatGPT, we have been reviewing other large language model solutions, and we haven't seen any that really come close producing the level quality we want compared to the stack we currently have. But it's always something that's being reviewed.
Okay, thank you. I hope that this is a full answer for everyone who was interested in this question. And now I will go to the question that actually I also received quite a lot when I was talking about the Scopus AI. So why it finds so little references? And the comment here was that the researchers, they tried few questions, but it always gives not more than 10 references. And there was also comment that not all of them are the recent ones. So how do you decide which references to show actually in the summary that we are getting in Scopus AI?
Yeah. So the 10 references, what we're trying to do with the Scopus AI, I think is a good place to start, is it's designed to be as kind of a snapshot. It's designed to help you sort of get started and learn about a new area very, very quickly. It's not meant to be a replacement for doing more comprehensive literature reviews or aggregating lots of different data sources. You're meant to be able to come in as an early career researcher or someone who doesn't know much about a field or kind of wants to experiment ideas and just get a high level view. And our goal is to make sure, even though it's 10, to make sure the top 10 there are the most relevant documents that we could find related to that query. And we're doing that within a certain time frame, which I think we covered in another question. And we felt that for our testing that those 10 actually did a really good job in providing that high level view. They solved the problem we were aiming to solve. Now, we also heard this a lot from users that people would like to see more documents incorporated. And I believe that's trying to solve a slightly different problem. That's getting to the realms of you're trying to almost kind of build reports or a much more comprehensive overview of a subject area, which is absolutely fine and is definitely a need, but it's not the current one we're trying to solve for. However, we did experiment in this area, and if you see on Scopus AI, there's a feature called the expanded summary, which also leverages a patent pending technology we developed in-house called RAG Fusion, which is effectively a really advanced prompting technique, which combines multiple different variations of query together. And that one actually goes up to 20 references. And what we find is that with that summary that's been generated, we actually get a really high satisfaction rating. It's been consistently over 90% satisfied to users since we launched it, and we get a lot of great feedback from that. So I think it's, depending on what you're trying to solve for, that might be a better place to go if you're trying to get a really more comprehensive, in-depth look at a subject area, the expanded summary. But for very quick overviews, the standard summary with 10 references, we thought did a really good job. The outdated references I can't speak to. It's the way references are selected by Scopus AI is primarily based on the abstract itself. So what it's trying to do, it's trying to not necessarily look for the ones in those citations or what journal it is or who published it. It's primarily looking at the content and saying, is this content relevant to the query that the user yourselves have put in? Which is why you might sometimes get slightly older papers as well. But we expect that the quality of the content in the abstract is high. And that's why you might see a broader range of time, different time ranges used for the 10 selected or the 20 selected.
Okay, I think that's the very broad answer in terms of why actually only 10. And I think I agree with you because I see that there is kind of an idea that if we have Scopus AI, then the literature search that normally researchers were doing by keywords and creating the query search, it's going to be done by Scopus AI. And I think this is not the idea itself for the solution. We are trying to get the quick idea of the subject, so you can do this quickly and get the most important information, but still we are not looking for the full literature search that it will tell you exactly what you can include in your basically introduction in the article that you are working on. So that's not the idea. This is something else. I think that no matter how much we try, we are still not there yet with artificial intelligence that full literature search can be done by AI. I think that will take some time. And it's always worth that researchers will do some search on their own. I mean, as a former researcher, I really respect some hard work and trying to get through all the articles that are in the subject. So the other question you actually referred to this is that the search of references allow only from 2013. So the question was, is it possible to expand the scope including all other sources? I believe this is important question from the perspective of, for example, humanities and social sciences, because they are not that much about the recent work, like, for example, chemistry that I'm representing, so quite close for me, or medicine, which is basically almost around the research that is in the last like 3-4 years, and the older publications don't count. So the question is, why did we actually in Elsevier decided for last 10 years? And well, is there any option it can be broader?
So this is also a question I get quite a lot. And as I mentioned before, the current goal we have is trying to create a snapshot of what the current research is saying. And we felt 10 years was a good time range to start with, to start doing that with. Now, it is absolutely possible for us to expand beyond 10 years, and we are planning to do experiments in the next couple of months to expand that even further. It's actually quite surprising. You actually get a lot of Scopus content just in the last 10 years. The publishing volume is massive, but I do acknowledge the point raised here is that, especially for humanities and some other subjects, what you may not be seeing are the really big papers that you'd be expecting to see because they might just fall outside that time range. The ones that might have been highly influential. And based on the way the Scopus AI works, even if we were to expand beyond those 10 years, I'm not sure you'd still see them in the actual documents picked to write the summary. And possibly you might do. Because as I mentioned before, the primary way the documents selected are based on the abstract. And so what will happen, and what we recognize is that, well, we know that there are some really important papers out there that people expect to see as part of their summary. And this has actually led to the development of another feature on Scopus AI, which you might have seen called the foundation papers. The foundation papers uses a separate technology stack called a graph, which is a kind of big citation graph that Elsevier has invested in for many, many years. And that isn't limited to 10 years. That's actually the whole Scopus corpus. And the goal of that feature is, I think, to do exactly what most people expect this 10-year, an expanded 10-year range to achieve, which is help me find out who are the big papers in this field, which are the ones that had the biggest influence. And sometimes who are the shoulders and the giants that we're standing on effectively that we talk about so often? They're quite hard to find unless you know a subject expert or you do a lot of research and you read a lot of reference lists. And that feature, the foundation papers, makes that super easy. You can put in any subject you can think of, and you can get to the core papers that have influenced that field very, very fast. So I feel like that feature satisfies the needs that an expanded 10-year range would give for most people. Now we will experiment with introducing a broader 10 years beyond the 10 years, but it's important to note, it's important to recognize that even if we do, those big foundational papers, the really influential ones, may not have in their abstract the information that you're actually looking for. So if you're asking for a field about, for example, large language models, some of the key papers in that field, even within the last 10 years, like Attention is All You Need, their abstracts don't actually contain information very much about that area. They talk broadly more about, I think, some of the methodology. So you actually could miss it entirely. What you're getting is instead papers that show practical application based on the query you've asked for. But using the foundation papers, you still get access to those papers. We can say with great confidence, like, these are the highly influential papers in this field, i.e. the papers we selected to write your summary, we found out which papers they're all commonly citing, and here they are. So long answer to the question, we are looking beyond 10 years, but I think the problem that an expanded 10-year range is actually solved with our existing foundation paper feature, and actually does a really good job of it if you're trying to find influential papers.
Okay, that's, I believe, a short comment and good tip for the ones that are trying now in Lithuania the Scopus AI to look deeply in the foundational papers and check whether their questions are not covered by these papers, basically by these articles. So one of the questions that also arised, because Lithuania, as you can imagine, is the Eastern European country, is about the differentiators between the citations that the articles are receiving. So it is widely known that some Western Europe authors are cited more by some other researchers just because they are, for example, coming from the very well-known institutions. So metrics are sometimes a little bit biased by this. And we all know that there is a lot of research basically about how there are differences between Eastern European countries and Western, how about emerging countries and the other countries. There's right now a lot of research about this. So the question was how we, in terms of this, how we are working with Scopus AI in terms of this. So what measures are in place to avoid this kind of bias in recommendation for Scopus AI?
Yeah. So you raise a good point about the bias in academic publishing and literature itself, and the citations that come with it. And yeah, of course, there's geographical bias can definitely play a part. Gender bias can play a part. Institutional bias can play a part. Who you know can play a part. And it's a real problem. I know there's a lot of very smart people out there trying to help at least understand where citations are coming from and trying to mitigate some of the issues or create more transparency around it. In our case, the Scopus AI, as I mentioned before, the way we select papers is not really based on citation count. It is primarily based, like 95% based on the content within the abstract itself. So we do a little bit of so I think what we do by doing it this way, the papers that are selected for Scopus AI are primarily based on their content, not on other factors. We do look at recency a little bit. Sometimes if you're a new paper in a field, it might give you a little bit of a boost, just so you have a chance to get a bit more exposure. But even that boost is tiny, and primarily it is the content itself. So we're hoping that based on that methodology, we are reducing the risk around citation bias that is normally introduced when people introduce that as a ranking factor, because we don't consider it as a ranking factor, really.
Okay, so that's a good news, I believe, because yeah, we all know there is a lot of bias, but it's human behavior. It's not anything that we are against it. It's just simply how the researchers are looking for the publications.
Yeah.
So
if I can finish a thought there, and actually, you know, it's interesting because we think we're doing the right thing here, but it's sometimes what happens is you might get papers that you previously may not have been exposed to very much before. And sometimes you might look at the papers and you go, well, this hasn't received many citations. So it's interesting that and some people will question us based on this, but at the same time, they give us this concern that citations influence the papers selected. So we may look into a way to allow people to select what kind of ranking system they would like. But yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword. But we're hoping giving even people with the best content the best chance.
I think that it's important to try other methodologies, right? Not only to cover one metric, because otherwise we are going to go all the time the same path and the same pattern. So it's good to hear that we are focusing in Scopus AI much more on the content than on the citations, because that means we are getting less influenced information. And I think that's also important for the researchers to know, because that means it is worth to try Scopus AI even on the subjects that you are working currently, because you may find out that actually there is different publication available there, because you were much more focused on, I don't know, impact factor of the journals where you were reading the articles, and here in Scopus AI you will find something completely different. So worth to try many approaches. I believe at some point you can find something really really useful and really creative. Okay, so I think we covered a little bit this question, but it still was sent over the email to me, so let's make sure it's clear. So from which parts of articles Scopus AI collects information, whether it's title, abstract, keywords, full text, or any other part of the article?
Yeah, absolutely. So primarily on the article itself, we focus mostly on the abstract. Abstract is pretty much the only thing we consider really for how we select the articles. Keywords are considered as part of the concept map, the visualization diagram within Scopus AI, which you've probably seen. We don't really consider title. The reason for that is we find, although titles are wonderful to give you a quick sense of what something's about, they don't really tell you in the title usually what's going on. And sometimes they're a bit, well, they're kind of like advertising. I guess you could argue the abstract is as well, but at least it's a bit more detailed. So we primarily focus on the abstract and keywords at the moment. full text is something we aren't using at the moment for Scopus AI. That's really, we need to be clear about this. We're using the abstract. Now, we are running experiments with full text in some parts of the business, but I guess one of the things with full text to consider is, number one, we're not entirely sure it actually will provide a great more benefit over abstracts. If you think about it, for the use case Scopus AI is solving for, it's trying to give you a quick overview of academic research for a given area. It's meant to help someone who's new to a field or someone who's exploring opportunities to make that process really easy. And usually when you do that and actually about 60% of Scopus users, we found when we surveyed them, have that problem. And primarily the way they're solving that problem is they're scanning a bunch of different abstracts in Scopus, and they're trying to work out which papers they want to go off and then read in more detail. So the abstract itself is actually a fantastic kind of summarized snapshot of what's contained within the paper. So we think it's a great data source for this use case. Now, full text, one could argue, could help with probably some other use cases we've discussed already. Like, if you want to go into a lot more detail, or you want to compare a lot of different charts and things like that, or tables and data. And I think there's definitely a place for full text in that in the future. But another thing to consider as well is we talked about bias already. And getting full text on any one platform is a challenge for any publisher or any product, really. I think one of the issues with, if we start bringing full text in, it may unfairly favor people who have full text available within a given platform. And for Scopus right now, that would primarily be Elsevier content. And we don't want to prioritize Elsevier content. We want to prioritize the best content. That's Scopus's goal. So it's something we're looking into. We think the abstract is a fantastic piece of information that really helps you get a quick sense, so overview of an area. And then we can do it cross-publisher very quickly. And we probably, yeah.
Okay, so now abstracts mostly. I agree with the comment about the titles. Yes, I remember the titles when I was writing my articles. The nightmare in terms of thinking how to make it attractive so anyone would like to read it and click it. So exactly, more promoting part than really trying to include in the title the content of the article and trying to say what the article is about, more about trying to attract attention.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, right? I'm not against people using titles to promote your paper. That is absolutely fine. What you're able to do with this technology is you look at the title, so you decide if you want to read the abstract. We just skip that step to you. We just go straight to the abstract and get that information out for you. So hopefully the title is not so necessary, and we can base it purely on the information that's represented by the paper. So not to say anything about titles, but we think we can just skip that step for you by using these technologies.
Less marketing, more information about really what is in the article and what content you can expect. I mean, good approach for everyone, I believe, who needs to do the literature review and this reading the titles and thinking like, I have no idea what this article is about after reading the title. Okay, so abstracts, hopefully somewhere in the future full text, but the question is how to make it happen and how to include not only Elsevier content, which we have access now, but broader content. I remember I received actually the comment on my first webinar saying like Scopus is also not covering all the content, but so far it's one of the biggest databases we have access to, which is covering many publishers, different countries and different outputs, which is important for us to start somewhere. And for us important is that this content is checked, evaluated, which we know based on this that this is a quality content, and we avoid situation like what would happen if we include, for example, the content from Google Scholar, because that could be risky as we don't know how many predatory journals we can find there. Mm-hmm. And the next question is actually, how does Scopus AI different from ChatGPT? So I think I kind of started to answer for this question by accident.
Yeah, I mean, how is it different from ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, any of the large language models out there? And I think, as we mentioned already before, the technology stack, like I think it's really important to note that the way Scopus AI works is grounded in the Scopus content. That's really important. We are not trying to leverage the inherent knowledge of any language model specifically. what we're doing with our prompt engineering is we're saying, here is the content, the best content we think represents the question or query the user's asked. I want you to help us write a summary for this person only based on this content. And whenever you make a claim or assumption, create transparency, explain where that claim or assumption came from. So what we are doing is we're more using the large language model, kind of like a synthesis, a language synthesis engine. It's saying, don't come up with stuff yourself. Here's trusted content, comes from a source that we can trace. Use this to help write the summary. And I think this is the main big difference between something like a ChatGPT or one of the other large language models out there. And the beautiful thing in Scopus is obviously the trusted Scopus content, which has gone through the curated selection and advisory board. And that's, I think, really what makes this product stand out is we can do so many of these interesting things on Scopus AI because we have great trust in the content itself. We know that this information is coming from where it's coming from. We know it's gone through additional advisory board review sessions, which means that we can take that and we can have more confidence writing our summaries, generating features of it, and less time having to go through a lot of additional sort of checks at runtime to make sure that we can trust it and where it comes from. Also means that we can do things like trust explicitly the abstract. Whereas if we weren't in Scopus, we probably have to factor in more things like citations and other things because we'd have to get some kind of community validation that this is safe to show to people. But thanks to the Scopus advisory board view, it doesn't really matter. We can say, no, we want to focus on the content quality because we trust that it's gone through the appropriate review process to get here, which actually makes us very unique in the market, I would say. Everyone else is probably going to have to put in some type of other community validation text of some kind, which means you will bring in the biases that come in with those checks, especially for citation count, or looking at where something was published or what country it comes from. We don't have to worry about that so much. So I think that's one of the big things that really differentiates Scopus AI.
Okay.
Plus, we have all the other cool things we mentioned already, like the graph, which does things like foundation. And also, I think that's the other thing to really mention here is it's not just a summary, right? If you notice who goes to use Scopus AI, it's kind of like a whole view of things. You type in a query, you're not just getting a summary, you're getting a whole bunch of different tools that help you get an overview in an area really quickly. So foundation documents, go to where did the ideas from this area come from? Who are the top people here? What are next big questions you want to ask if you're still exploring a subject? How do you build your vocabulary there? Concept maps to get a bird's eye view of the main ideas or topics in the area that, hey, you can learn the terminology off and then you can go and do a more comprehensive Scopus literature search because now you know what terminology to use. So it's not just the generative AI being used for this one thing. It's a kind of a whole ecosystem of tools that helps you. We've really thought carefully with our users. How do we help people get up to speed really fast? So that's kind of what you're getting with Scopus AI over any of these other solutions.
Yeah, the ones that were with me on the webinar, they know that I'm a huge fan of the concept map. And I was super excited anytime I was showing it on the first webinar. So I agree. There is a lot of other things except of the summary that are cool. I'm going to use this word. And exciting for especially for someone who is just trying completely new subject. Because if you are already kind of aware what is in the subject, that's a different story. But if you are trying to find out something about completely new things about you, then the concept map is a great start just to get this brief idea, what am I looking at? Okay, so the question, which I think is very valid, is how the information generated by the Scopus AI can be used in a scientific work. So how researchers can use it in articles to avoid the misunderstanding that it was either a plagiarism or any other accusation. What's your advice?
Well, I mean, Scopus AI is primarily a research tool. It's meant to take something people were doing already with search tools and make it much easier, which was learning about new areas and content. And I can't stop anyone taking something Scopus AI has generated and putting it somewhere else. However, I don't recommend it. And it's in the same way that, you go and do a search regularly, you see some abstracts that look good to you. Most people aren't going to copy and paste those abstracts into their literature, into their work and call it a job done. And I would argue it's a similar thing for Scopus AI. we are resynthesizing the abstract content based on the query to try and see whether we can directly answer something or we can provide an overview of something. And so it's more of a discovery tool. It's not a writing tool. So use it as a means to sort of get a quick overview of something and then go, like you would in a regular search, go to the original paper and read in more depth, read in more detail. It's not replacing the work for you. It's just making the pain and the time of getting to relevant literature much, much faster and much easier. That's the goal here. Not to help write papers, although we can't stop people copying and pasting, and we've been told people do that. One of the reasons why we now include when you try and copy and paste, hey, this has been generated by AI. Same for the concept map. And it's now in rate the plagiarism. I've been hearing more about this, so it's actually kind of surprising me a little bit. And so first we're using the abstract content, and we have the rights to use that abstract content from the appropriate publishers. And secondly, I think we're going to hear more about this. I think when people bring up plagiarism, correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone on the call wants to talk out, but people have been growing concerned that sometimes in the summaries we generate, sometimes some lines will be word for word the same as part of the abstract. And that's being called out as plagiarism. And it's interesting because we don't see that as plagiarism. In fact, there's actually a growing body of evidence. First of all, it's using the abstract content. And for AB, we're not trying to publish this, and we're not recommending when Des publish this. It is a discovery tool, same as reading the abstract. We just resynthesize. If we took the abstract and we put it into a generative AI and say, hey, recreate this abstract, it wouldn't really be plagiarism. I think if we were training content or stuff on it, maybe there'd be a risk there. But we're not training any models with this. It's completely separate. But sometimes actually what we're learning, and I think we'll see more about this in the next couple of months, is there's a growing concern that the more you take source content like we have, like abstracts, and you give it to an AI and you say, AI, please completely rewrite this, the more chance you introduce for things like hallucinations and mistakes. And actually, sometimes an abstract's way it's written is actually the best way to convey the information. And there's no reason for us to change that to something that may not be as good. So between these different things, number one, we want to stay true to the source material we're using. And we also cite and reference whenever we do use information from an abstract source. So it's not, I don't think it's plagiarism in that sense, because you can trace the origin. B, we're not publishing this anywhere. We're not putting it on a page and saying, hey, this is this is the Scopus topic page. It's primarily a discovery-based tool. And the author's words sometimes are the best words to help convey information. And we want to stay true to that as best as possible when it makes sense to, and ensure there's transparency when we do.
Okay, and the simple answer for the researchers who would like to use the summary is please not copy this, because you may actually by accident even do the plagiarism, because Scopus AI could basically quote what was in the abstract, right? So then if we think about using what Scopus AI is generating in the articles that we are writing, it's rather we have to put additional effort in our work to make sure it's not copy-paste from someone's abstract.
I agree. Again, it's not a writing tool. It is a tool to help make it really easy and fast to learn about an area and new information within it. And yes, sometimes we will use the abstract verbatim.
What about the concept map? Can it be used in the articles with, for example, information it was generated by Scopus AI or not?
Again, I get this question a lot. I know people are already using it. I would not recommend using it directly. Definitely be inspired by it. I mean, if you're going to publish some work, I mean, you can't really cite. I think there's actually more. This area moves so quickly, but already I know that there's rules coming in that you can't use AI as a co-author, for example. And I guess if you were to use the concept map, you'd probably have to do that. So I would again use the concept map, use it for your own research, your own notes and stuff, but be inspired by it. It's I wouldn't recommend using it directly.
Okay. So in terms of the future, what are your plans to expand the use of artificial intelligence in Scopus?
You can imagine this is what we've been able to achieve in just a couple of months. and we're not short of ideas. In fact, we have probably too many, which is a real challenge as a product person. So picking the ones that are going to drive the most value is hard. It's a fun challenge there. So I think definitely especially expect in the next couple of weeks, maybe even this week, big improvements to the summary quality and the papers selected. We're introducing some new technology that's going to make that vector search even better. And testing internally is proving some really, really great results, which we're excited about. The other thing we would love to do is we love to make it possible for people to write queries in their own language, not necessarily English. Does not mean that you'll get responses in your own language, but we recognize that for a lot of people, being able to articulate something can work really well in their native language, but they would also prefer to read a response in English. So we're working towards that. That's should be coming hopefully soon as well. Expect big improvements to the concept map. So we've been trying to be completely honest with you, when we launched a concept map, we thought it'd be very useful for getting an idea of vocabulary, but it was such a weird and new idea to take papers and do something like this with it. And FYI, a lot of diagrams and a lot of products, maybe even Scopus, dare I say, I don't think are really that useful. I think they're very pretty, but not useful. The concept map was meant to be a useful tool. I think we're halfway there. So expect to see some changes to the concept map where you're going to see it more as a navigation tool. So if you can imagine, you get an overview of these different terms and people want to click on it. The question is, what should happen when you click on it? And what we're going to do is we're going to create mini summaries to help explain how different ideas relate together, depending on when you click on the concept map. And we think people are going to really like that. There's some of the other things I can't really talk about right now, so I need to just think. But there are some exciting developments. I think the way to think about this is everything you see on Scopus AI now is going to get a lot better. Consider this as version 1. And we've learned a ton. Speaking to users, getting feedback, running sessions like this one. And we know it's not a perfect solution. There's a lot more work that needs to go into it. But anything that's going to be helping people identify opportunities. I mean, our goal from Scopus AI is we want to help turn people or researchers and academics into the most successful versions of themselves. So we want to be able to make it easy to not only stay on top of field and understand what information might be relevant, but also understand what kind of opportunities might be out there, or even help you kind of what direction you may want to be moving into. Things that go deeper are interesting on Scopus AI because you solve an area, you don't really know what question to ask, but you do a few of those go deeper questions, you get a sense of how to talk about subject area. And there's a lot more in that field we want to do to help encourage more discovery and help give people more guidance about where they may want to go next in their research journey or new areas or ideas they want to explore. So I'm hoping we will see more things around that launched in the next couple of months. But I think that's all I can talk about right now.
So shortly, a lot of improvements and a lot of plans and more plans than you can actually plan in your calendar in the next year, which sounds great for definitely for the users and for the ones that they're going to use this solution. There is one more question, but this is more a question to me than to you, Adrian, I believe. So the question is, how else is access for Scopus AI available if your institutions only has a temporary accessibility to it? So yes, that's true. In Lithuania, we have now the trial, which is going to end, I believe, in the next 10 days. I can tell on my end that with Lithuanian consortium, we are working on granting for the institutions access permanently. There is no other way than the institutional subscription. So my strong suggestion and also recommendation and request is please make sure that you are talking with your libraries, with your libraries, and also with the management of your universities, and you make sure that they are aware that this is a solution that is needed for you. Because without the feedback from you, we won't be able to work further on making sure that this access is available for everyone. So that's basically the whole story in Lithuania right now. But I can guarantee that, yes, the Lithuanian consortium also realized that there is quite big interest in Scopus AI, so we will try our best. However, there are, as you know, all limitations, so your support is going to be very helpful for us. And I think with this, we are basically almost on time. There is 1 minute more, so I believe we can try to end this conversation today. Adrian, it was very nice to, well, see you and meet you. And I
Likewise.
can see that you are really enjoying working on Scopus AI. You are very, very excited about this, and I'm glad to hear that there are so many other plans for the solution in the coming months. Yes, I hope that also our audience was excited about today's session. I'm going to share the link to the recording with everyone, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of the trial. And I'm waiting for some feedback from all of you in terms of what worked great and what is still something that we can try to improve. So any feedback, I'm going to send the short survey to everyone, so you can have a chance to let us know in case you would like to see something more from our end. And with this, thank you very much and have a nice afternoon.
Thank you very much, everyone. Pleasure speaking to you all.
Bye.